Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. It has been an emotionally charged couple of days up at the Tennessee legislature. The legislature is not in session, but the Senate Judiciary Committee is. And it is hearing debate on whether to ban abortion in the state of Tennessee. For the last 2 days, this debate has gone on. And again, it is before the Senate Judiciary Committee. We are very happy to have with us somebody from that committee, Senator Katrina Robinson, Democrat from Memphis.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So we've had people pro-life on by themselves. I know you were pro-choice on. You're on by yourself. But I want to get a sense of what's happening at this committee. We'll have, again, people from both sides on at various times throughout. But from your point of view, okay, what is happening? What's happened the last 2 days? Who has testified? And just kind of tell us what's been going on in this committee for the last 2 days.
Okay, so that we get an accurate picture, I'll give you an outline of how the process goes.
Right.
So when a senator writes legislation, it first goes to the committee, which is the committee that's in charge of whatever the topic is. And so this particular bill came through the Judiciary Committee this spring, and the committee did not pass it to go to the floor. Instead, we elected to send it to summer study because we felt like, or some of the committee members felt like, it needed more information in order to make an accurate decision or a more informed decision. And so it came through to our summer study, which we just had today and yesterday. And during summer study, you hear testimony from both sides, from different areas of expertise and different different opinion and views. And so we had people who were faith leaders, healthcare providers, attorneys, professors of law, and those who do the work in the reproductive rights community.
So this originally started out as the heartbeat bill, right?
Yes.
It was the heartbeat bill, and I think we've had the sponsor of that on this show. It is now a total ban. Is that right? What you're discussing is now a total ban of abortion in the state of Tennessee. Is that right?
Theoretically, it is. So the way that the bill passed in the House, it passed in the spring in the House, but it did not pass in the Senate. The way that it passed was that it was contingent upon a medical provider being able to detect a fetal heartbeat as to whether or not the abortion would be legal. And the amendment that we've received to evaluate the bill in summer study, it then opens it up to be whether the medical provider can detect increase in HCG hormone, which is an indication that the woman is pregnant and has a viable pregnancy, meaning viable as she could possibly carry the baby to term, or the doctor could detect a heartbeat. And so essentially it is a total ban because you can detect HCG very early in the pregnancy.
And this would be one of the most strict abortion bans in the country.
Absolutely. Should
it pass. And all right, so it was the heartbeat. I guess get a little more into what this change is. Would there be a way to get an abortion at all based on the change that's being contemplated now?
No, to be honest with you, because you have to know you're pregnant to get an abortion. And so most times women don't find out they're pregnant until maybe after the 6th to 8th week that they're pregnant, which was the controversy with the fetal heartbeat bill. But now that we've introduced the requirement that HCG hormone be detected, and that may be one of the factors, then we're talking about essentially not being able to get an abortion.
The legislation will ban abortion once a woman knows she's pregnant. So yeah, if she knows she's pregnant, then she would not be able to get an abortion. So that's very restrictive.
Exactly.
What is happening here is essentially a lot of states, as I understand it, are trying to come up with a bill that can go to the Supreme Court, right? That can challenge Roe versus Wade. Are you hearing that aspect of this in what your discussions are or have been up there in the last 2 days?
Yes, so the larger organizations or larger pro-life organizations, the overarching objective of those organizations is to overturn Roe versus Wade federally. And so you'll see division on the other side about how do we go about doing that. Do we wait for the federal government to overturn Roe versus Wade, which is probably the basis of the bill that we passed earlier in the session, which was the trigger ban. So we have a bill that passed in the Senate that basically outlaws abortion in Tennessee contingent upon the federal government overturning Roe versus Wade. Now, There are some proponents of the bill that say we don't want to wait on the federal government. We need to be able to challenge it on our own. And some of them say, okay, let's wait so that we don't lose traction on our argument. And I think that's division on the other side. So now we have those who are proponents of the bill who say, let's do all we can to stop abortion. I don't care what the repercussions are, what the cost is to the state, or the feasibility of us actually passing the legislation. Let's do it this way. And then you have those who are waiting on Roe versus Wade to be overturned.
How likely is it this would pass? I mean, again, the legislation will be one of the most restrictive in the country. This is summer study. How likely is it that this is gonna pass in Tennessee?
I can't speak to the likelihood of it because of the division that's there. Some people understand the practicality of passing a bill like this, whether it is practical, what the implications would be for the state. There would be costs associated with litigation.
Because what it's passing would be contrary to Roe versus Wade. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, it would be contrary to Roe versus Wade. So there would be all kinds of legal challenges.
Yes.
And so the question is, would this withstand those legal challenges?
It won't.
And you feel like it won't?
No. We had a witness today from the ACLU who's responsible for protecting civil rights. And they have pretty much sued every legislature that has tried to enact a bill like this and won. And at that point, the state is required to pay that organization's attorney fees, their own legal costs, and whatever ramifications come behind that legislation.
So we're seeing some video from the actual event. What was it like in the hearing room? You were in there the last 2 days. Describe what it was like.
So we had 2 days of testimony. We had 26 witnesses. 9 of them were women. We had witnesses from the faith organizations, from schools of law. We had professors, we had lawyers, we had pro-life attorneys and counsel. We had representation from Planned Parenthood as far as counsel is concerned. And we also had some people that worked to preserve reproductive justice. And so the pro-life organization sent quite a few people. On yesterday, we heard from most of those that were proponents of abortion being banned in Tennessee, whether that was the pro-life view or whether that was the fetal heartbeat view. And then today we heard from mostly the other side, as well as those who are against the bill.
And what has it been like to be in there?
It has been very challenging. You know, we're attempting to legislate a very personal issue that affects quite a few people, and I'm sure there are some people that are connected to the issue more personally than others. And so it's hard to be able to look at things from an unbiased perspective, especially in a legislative standpoint. But to have to hear testimony from a one-sided view, it makes it a little bit more emotionally and mentally draining, because you understand the gravity of the actual facts that happen if we ban abortion. I mean, there are people talking about, you know, the religiosity of it. There are people talking about the moral standpoint. But when it's all said and done, there's so much more that happens if we enact this law.
You said you gave a number of the number of people that testified. I think you said 27. You said 26. You said 9 were women. What do you think about that?
I think it's absurd. As a woman who would be ultimately affected by this bill, as a mother of a woman who would be affected by this bill, as a woman who serves a constituency of over 73% women, I think it says a lot to have men testifying on women's issues.
And why is it that way? I mean, you're part of the committee. Why couldn't it be more equal if that was your concern?
Well, I didn't have any say-so in who was the witness. There were over 40 organizations or individuals requesting to testify at the committee, and our chairman whittled it down to 26 people. And the chairman's office was responsible for how the roster went and what order they were allowed to speak in, and whether they were able to give their full testimony today. And
so it ended how? It ended today, and then you've come over here, which we appreciate.
Thank you.
Where do you go now? Like, you've heard both sides. Did you vote today, or what happens now?
No, there was no vote taken today. We got to hear mostly everyone's full testimony. There was one that was cut short. And we sat through it all. And at the end, the chairman remarked that we have some more work to do in order to get this bill, or any bill that we see fit to restrict abortion in Tennessee, we have some work to do. And that was the conclusion of the committee. And so now we come back in session in January and we see what happens.
And it seems like, okay, so if it started with a heartbeat bill, and now you have a bill that would ban abortion once a woman knows she's pregnant. So it's moving farther along as far as that goes. One of the most restrictive abortion bans in the country is what's being debated. So where do you think this will end up?
It'll end up in court if we pass it. But I think, if I can speculate, I would think that the other side is not going to go forth with trying to pass this legislation, just based on the implications it would place on the state and on the agenda. So if it's going to cost us a lot, if it's going to hurt the pro-life agenda overall, I don't think that they will pass it. I mean, you have to look at the precedent states that have tried to do the same thing over and over and over again. Tennessee is not any more superior than another state in our thinking as to how we're going to craft legislation that somehow finds a loophole in federal law. You can't change the definition of a word. If you read the bill, the attempt is to change the definition of viability, when we know from a federal standpoint that viability means that the fetus can survive outside of the womb. At 6 weeks, they can't. At 2 weeks, they can't. We've established that viability is somewhere between 20 to 24 weeks.
So explain that. We can get into the weeds here. We have a little more time. Why is that word so important? Viability, why is that word so important here?
That word is important because it is one of the words that is used in precedent law, meaning it is addressed in Roe versus Wade. It is addressed in the Casey law. And basically, it's that the state cannot interject or enter any type of legislation that impedes on a woman's ability to seek an abortion after the fetus is viable. I'm sorry, before the fetus is viable.
Right. So if the fetus is viable, and you say that means it's defined by it could live on its own.
Right.
If the fetus
with or without assistance. So meaning.
So if it could live on its own, then tell me if I'm wrong. You cannot have an abortion. Right. If the fetus is not viable, meaning it can't live outside of the womb, then you could have an abortion. That would mean you could have an abortion up to
in the state of Tennessee, it's 16 weeks.
16 weeks. So this would obviously change that, and they want to change it by they kind of redefine the definition of viability. Right, meaning that if I can detect a heartbeat or if I see hormone in your urine test, then the fetus is viable, which is not the same thing. If I detect hormone, and I'm a nurse by the way, if I detect the human growth hormone in your urine and I can detect a heartbeat, that means that you're pregnant. It means that there's a living thing inside. That does not necessarily mean that that living thing will grow to be a healthy fetus that can be delivered and survive outside of the womb. And is that question of viability, is that what has been at the center of these other court challenges? Is that the primary thing, or are we talking about other stuff as well? Well, it's not necessarily the question of viability, it's the state enacting a law that intercedes on a woman's ability to do that. So there are states that are trying to make it where a woman cannot get an abortion, say, past 8 weeks. Well, that's within the stage of we don't know whether this fetus is viable or not, so no, the state does not have the liberty to do so based on precedent law. But could the state pass a law and then it goes up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court just change it? They could change it. Change the courts, what? Roe versus Wade, the wording that is in there, we're getting a more conservative Supreme Court. So if you had the right bill, could it just change the law? Well, we have a majority to uphold the law, but we don't have a majority to change it. So at this point, we don't know that. And that's up to the federal government. The state government cannot push the federal government to change a federal law. We're one of 50 states. But the Supreme Court, could the Supreme Court change it? Or you're saying it would have to be congressional, or what are you saying? The Supreme Court? It would have to be by amendment. It would have to be by an amendment. Okay. So that would take a lot of time. Right, which the state has no power to do. So this battle, all right, and why are you thinking that they're not going to go forward with it? Did you hear that discussion here in the state of Tennessee? Did you hear that discussion in the committee today? You mean about here in Tennessee? Forward? Yeah, in Tennessee, you think they're not going to go forward with this particular bill? Right. I've heard some conversations about it, and some of the testimony you can kind of read between the lines that
we don't think that this is a viable way to, excuse me, no pun intended, to go about pursuing our agenda of banning abortion. So.
And why do you come down on the side that you come down on?
I just believe that, and as I said to you earlier, this was such an emotional time in the committee, and that resonates personally with a lot of people, whether it's our constituents, whether it's those witnesses who testified, or the senators that are sitting up on the dais. And the fact that it's so personal to so many people could be a clear indication that it's not a topic that we should be passing legislation on. I believe that the right to make decisions about what happens in your body belongs to that woman. I believe that families should be able to make independent decisions about how they plan their families.
But is this is one of those things that just isn't going away. That's your point of view, and then the other point of view is that's, it's a life and it needs to be protected. Do you see a way that we could ever find compromise on this issue where the two sides are so entrenched?
I don't know right now. I don't see the pathway to compromise right now, especially with the climate in politics right now. I do know that, the state has a duty to represent all of its constituents, and there's so much more that we can do if we are pro-life and we want to protect life outside of regulating a woman's right to make her own reproductive decisions. If we care so much about saving children, one of the senators remarked we can save 10,000 children by doing this. Why are we stripping away child health care insurance programs? Why are we not providing the necessary medical care for women to be able to seek that prenatal care and for their infants so that we don't have high infant mortality and maternal mortality rates? Why are we not providing that same health care that can provide birth control to the woman so that we don't have as many unintended pregnancies where women are seeking abortion? So I think there's a way to get to what we're trying to do, but it's not by banning abortion.
And could this have an impact on birth control? What's being discussed here?
It could. We've seen in North Dakota just recently, I think last week, the American Medical Association filed a lawsuit against the state of North Dakota for a bill that's very similar to this, because ultimately it would impact women being able to access contraceptives and birth control.
And how? Why would it?
So say, for instance, in North Dakota, one of the things was they required the doctor to counsel the woman that she could reverse the Plan B pill or the morning after pill.
Okay.
Which is not essentially true. And the Medical Association, as well as we had someone from the Obstetrics and Gynecology Association, both advocate that women's reproductive health is between the woman and the physician who is licensed to provide medical care.
Okay. All right. That kind of sets the table. So now we'll open up the phone lines. There are a couple people on there. If you want to call in, there's a number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. I want to hear from you, your thoughts. Tough topic, but go ahead. Give us a call. Take a break. Be back right after this.